All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a CMU CS Academy live question and answer session. I'm Austin. I'm a full-time software developer on the team.
For the entire week. We're offering it
Where's
3 times a day.
Aaron's
each day,
voice coming from?
9:30 a.m.
What in the world?
1:30 p.m.
I must have a
and
hidden
5:30 p.m. all in Eastern time.
That's pretty funny.
We look forward.
Always with us.
I was playing our CT showcase music beforehand, and it started auto-playing one of our other Q&As. All right. So as I was saying, I'm going to be the moderator this afternoon, but the real stars of our show here are undergrad student team members. So we've got with us Emily. You want to give us a wave? Johnny? And Amar. And this is our second to last Q&A session this week, but we do have one more today, Friday, November 6th at 5:30 p.m. So if you're watching this in the future, in the next few hours, you still have one more live session that you can come see. So before we get started, just a few ground rules. So we're expecting that classroom teachers will be the ones to post questions on behalf of their entire classrooms in the chat. And we expect that the only text that shows up in the chat is questions for our student team and answers to our questions. And before we actually get started with those questions, we'll go around and introduce ourselves, and you can introduce yourselves too. So let us know where you're coming from in the chat, and we'll try to break the ice a little bit. So Johnny, do you want to take it away and tell us what your major is and what you do for CS Academy?
Sure. I'm Johnny. I'm a third-year computer science student, minoring in music technology here at CMU. I'm from Bethesda, Maryland, though right now I'm actually in Texas with my older brother because of COVID. I've been working on the CMU project since I was a freshman, and I've done sort of content testing, and also more recently I've moved over to the teacher support and outreach teams and helping with the professional developments.
Cool. Emily, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a sophomore studying biology with a minor in computer science. I am from New Jersey, but right now I'm on campus in Pittsburgh. I have been pretty much predominantly on the teacher support outreach team, and I started the last summer. So I help run a lot of the professional development for teachers. I'm helping produce a lot of teacher and student facing resources like the unit review videos and Scotty Scribbles.
Awesome. And last but not least, Amar.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amar. I'm currently a 4th year student at CMU. I study architecture, and I'm minoring in human-computer interaction. I'm originally from Princeton, New Jersey, which is where I am right now. And I joined CS Academy last summer as a member of the content team. So I'm responsible for coding a lot of the exercises that go into the curriculum. Yeah.
Awesome. So if you're just joining us, we'd love to get your questions in the chat. But while we wait for some of those questions from classrooms to start flowing in, we'll ask an easy one just to get started. So let's say, how did you get involved in CS Academy? Who wants to take it? Go for it.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm a pretty new member. I started over the summer, and I was taking the intro level CS class, as Austin knows, 15112, and the Professor Cosby, who's also one of the co-founders of CS Academy, put out like a post and was like, hey, if anyone's interested, I run this organization. And I looked into it, and I personally did a lot of teaching, a lot of tutoring in high school. I really loved it. I also was a little frustrated that I didn't really have access to a lot of CS resources in my high school, and how I was kind of not forced, but I was unable to discover this interest I had until pretty late in the game, while other people have been dabbling in it for so long. So I really thought it was like such an interesting project, so much going on, and it just has like a really amazing goal that I wanted to contribute to. So I ended up applying, and the rest is history. So I'm really happy that I get to work on such a meaningful project.
Awesome.
For me, I found out about it. Our assistant dean, Tom Cortina, sends out a list of summer opportunities at CMU, basically on a regular basis. And that's how I found out about it at first. And kind of like Emily, what I found was the project goal really resonated with me, because in high school, although I did actually have AP Computer Science that I was able to take, it was pretty like boring compared like the things we were doing. Like I still enjoyed the class and I enjoyed programming, but like the projects were like these text-based programs that were like tax related, and it just wasn't very interesting to me. And so what CS Academy was, one of the things they're doing was making that bridge between interesting things in middle school and like pre-high school, and the bridging that to AP Computer Science so that there's still like interesting things you're doing with the more advanced programming. So that was something that really resonated with me.
Cool. And Amar?
Yeah, so the reason I joined CS Academy is basically very similar to Emily's story. I also took that same intro to programming class, and I I saw a post by Professor Cosby asking if any of his students were interested in joining the project, and it just seemed like a very awesome opportunity where I could, learn about this project and also get experience with doing many things related to the project and being able to just like work with such a fantastic group of students all across campus. So yeah, I applied and thankfully I got in, and I've been really happy and excited to work on this project ever since.
All right, thanks everybody. We've got a question from Mrs. Sam's classroom. This one's pretty general, but I think it'll be a good one to talk about. Just what is college like? How does it compare to high school? What are the differences and similarities? Do you like it?
I'll start maybe. So the biggest adjustment for me going into college was at home, my parents spoiled me very much, and I didn't really have to think about, like how do I feed myself and all of these other things. So there's definitely a huge adjustment of living on my own for the first time and actually having to think about these things. So like college life is very different. The other thing for me is like the amount of freedom you have, not just in taking care of yourself, but also in the classes you're taking. In high school, you're stuck to a pretty rigid schedule, 7 classes back to back. You don't have control of when they are. You have some like electives you can choose from. College, it's like wide open. There's, certain requirements you have to meet over your 4 years in order to graduate. But beyond that, it's so open that sometimes it's overwhelming, but it feels really nice. And that's one of the things I really enjoy, is being able to take classes that I really like.
Awesome.
For me, I think that the biggest thing for college, between college and high school, is my high school is pretty odd. We had like free time and we did have some flexibility over our schedule. So for me, it wasn't as jarring, but I would say that college is harder than high school. You're just taking much higher level material. And with high school, when I took a hard class, that meant great. I got to sit in my room for hours and study. And then I guess I would see my like dog every hour or so. So very exciting stuff. So with high school, you kind of have this marriage of academic and life because you live where you go to school in a lot of cases, which isn't the case for a lot of high schools. So when I got here, I realized, oh, I could work alone in my room for hours, or the weather's nice, I could go meet up with a friend and work with them. You just have people and peers and resources so much more accessible to you. So for me, like college is harder than high school. College is a lot more intense than high school, but I feel much happier than I ever did in high school because I can turn to people so much more easily. Like when I say support network, I mean walk outside my room, knock on my like neighbor's door and be like, hi, it's a hard time. Can I talk? Like you just have more access. You have more, like on one hand, you have this freedom and it's overwhelming, but you can take this freedom and just like make every experience so much more better for yourself.
Awesome.
Yeah, I guess to add on to this, both what Johnny and Emily said, I feel like college it really requires you to mature a lot faster, and also you really become independent when you move from going to high school. And like, well, I mean, I guess it's not the same for people that go to college and commute and still live at home. Like that's also a different experience. But what I can speak for is for those of you planning on going to college somewhere far away from home and you plan on living there, it really does make you a lot more independent. You have to learn how to take care of a lot of things yourself, such as like things like laundry, cooking for yourself, all of that. And I feel like most people who come into college don't think about that ahead of time. So that, like, when they're in the process of doing those things, they're just like, oh, this is so much harder than I thought. To be honest, like I've had so many friends who never cooked for the first time, and it was a disaster when they attempted to. but but yeah, just things like basic life skills like that are I think that's like one of the most beautiful things about college is you're forced to like learn about these things early on, but then as Emily said, you have this great network of friends and um, yeah, I get sorry, just friends that are there to help you along the way and for you to like learn those lessons with. So that's like one of my favorite things about college for sure. And I think one of the big differences between high school.
Awesome. Thanks, Amar. We have a question from Mrs. Leslie's classroom. Thanks for asking. Do you work alone or in groups to create the exercises for CMUCS Academy? How often do you add new exercises? Does anybody have insight into that?
Yeah, so for the content team, we usually we're like assigned a specific like exercise group or a specific unit for one for like which we want to create exercise. And the way we go about it is we'll maybe have like a meeting or something like that to just think of ideas, or I mean, it's been a lot more difficult since we're entirely virtual, but I mean, we usually do communicate back and forth about like initial ideas, get feedback from one another. And we always have a team meeting where everybody goes through critiques of the exercises to see what things work, what things are better, what things still need to be improved upon before they can actually be developed and included in the website. So it is a very collaborative process. I'd say how often we develop the exercise, it really depends. I guess it's more about what the deadlines are. So if I mean over the summer we were developing a lot more exercises for CS2, which is our new flagship course that we just launched the pilot for. And now it's more about revising older exercises from other units. So it really just depends on what the I guess like what the most pressing issue is.
Cool. Any other? Well, why don't we make that more broad and say when you're working on a hard homework assignment or like working on a really hard problem for a CS course, is that collaborative or are you just like alone in your room banging your head against the wall?
A little of both. So there's definitely it will depend. So when you're thinking about high level concepts, you're definitely like for me, I'm always trying to talk to friends. But if I'm in a class that has a programming assignment and it gets down to okay, we've talked about the concepts and now I have to sit down and actually code it, that's where it starts to, I'm sort of alone banging my head in the wall sometimes because, sometimes it's not even something conceptual. It's just like you gotta figure out like your little mistakes as you're coding it, and there's the whole rubber ducking process. But it can even then I'll sometimes like if I'm stuck on like some kind of coding problem, I'll like still go through the concepts again, talk to someone. We call it the rubber duck method. Just talk to someone, and then usually the process of just explaining what my procedure is will help me identify the bug. So even then, it's not generally alone. And I always, even if I can't talk directly about what the code is, I still have people sympathizing with me who are like, I'm also stuck on this. So never truly alone.
Anything else to add, Emily?
Yeah, I'm just gonna, as someone who handed in a coding assignment like maybe 2 hours ago that was very much head banging against the wall, so it's pretty like, I don't want to ask someone, hey, what was your code like? And I don't want to talk to someone in the class and be like, here's what my code does, because that's cheating. But I have a younger sister who's in high school, and a lot of times I'm like, get on the phone with me and just sit there. And she's like, why? I'm like, I'm just going to talk to you about this problem and just nod along. So yeah, as Johnny said, like it's like like a coding thing. The rubber ducking process is like you have a rubber duck. It could be anything. It could be a person, a stuffed animal, the wall behind your computer, and you're just like, okay, so in my first function, I'm going to draw a rectangle. And in that rectangle, like you just talk it out with someone. So it's a mix of both. Sometimes you just got to brute force your way, bang your head against a wall a little bit and just figure out why this one colon is missing and not working. But it's also really good to have someone to bounce ideas off of, especially on like a super high level.
Awesome. We have another question from Mrs. Haas. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. That's, how long does it take to create a new exercise? I guess there could be a couple different parts of that question, like how long does it take to write the first draft? How long does it take to come up with the idea? How many rounds of review do you do on it? It's probably more of a question for Amar again.
Yeah, I guess because every member of the team takes, like, they spend different amounts of time. I'd say on average, well, like Austin said, it's not just a one-dimensional process. There's a lot of like levels to it. Writing the first draft can take anywhere from like 4 to 8 hours for an exercise, depending on its complexity. That's just from what I've seen working over the summer. And then after the first draft, like I said, we go through the critiques with the rest of the content team, where we ask for feedback to see like what things can be improved, and that in itself is another process that could like take like 1 hour, even longer than that. And then there needs to be a second round of edits, just to, well, then, I mean, after that process, we go through a quality control thing where we'll have somebody else, you know, like solve the exercise to make sure that the exercise is looked at from a different perspective. And so that's like a second level. And then from there on, that's like when we would do like finishing touches. And then that could be, what's it called? Like, then that's like the stage where the exercise would be able to be like developed. So I don't know. I don't know if I could say or give like a standard time, because there is like so many parts of these levels to just like making an exercise.
Cool. All right, we've got another question from Bridges to Science that says, why do you make the exercises so hard? Good question.
Help you learn? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a good answer.
Yeah, I think that is the answer. Like, I think I can take this one. So
yeah,
the whole point of, let's see, if we call it an exercise because you should be exercising something. So like when you're trying to learn how to think algorithmically, it's really like flexing a muscle. You're changing the way that you think. You have to flex your brain just like you'd flex anything else. And if you go to work out and you do like 2 sit-ups, you're not going to get any abs because it was too easy. So you have to make things at least difficult enough that you're straining against it a little bit to actually change the way that you think and to learn the material well. So that's the idea behind it. Hopefully we don't make it so hard that it's impossible, but we also don't just want to make it a breeze. So we always try to hit a middle ground somewhere where it makes you think, and you have to think for a little while and struggle with it, but you can actually make it through and you get out the other side knowing something after the fact. Anybody else have feedback on the difficulty of exercises?
I mean, I know I can speak from, I think we all did all the, like most of the exercises at CMU, CS Academy as well. So we sympathize as well. Trust me, there are some exercises that I was banging my head against a wall as well. So don't worry about it. Like, I think, yeah, you're just it's going to get easier. Like, you just have to learn how to like throw code at a wall sometimes, learn how to like brute force your way through it. But yeah, it just, again, it's not going to change if you do 2 sit-ups. I really like that analogy, by the way.
yeah, I can confirm that doing 2 sit-ups has not developed abs in me.
Nice. All right, let's do another general college question. What advice do you have for high school students preparing to apply for college?
My biggest piece of advice, I think, is don't worry too much about where you end up going, because I think for a lot of people, most places you end up, you'll find a community, you'll be happy, you'll learn what you need to, you'll do well. So I think there tends to be a lot of stress on like, how do you make sure you're choosing the right place? How do you make sure, you know, you have to get into the elite level school or anything like that? I was lucky that I was able to take classes at the University of Maryland in my senior year. And that was really helpful for me because I made friends at Maryland. I was taking classes there. And I knew that, like, so Maryland was my home school, right? It was probably the school that I was like most likely to go if I didn't go to any of my reach schools, right? And from taking classes there, from being part of the community there in my senior year, that was really helpful to me during the application process because I knew that no matter what happened, I would be happy in college, find a community, learn what I needed to. So my biggest piece of advice is just like, don't stress too much about it. Like obviously go for the reach, like see what you can do, but like don't stress about like, is this the one college, you know, that I need to go to? It's not going to be like that. You should be able to be happy no matter where you go.
Great advice.
I was going to say that really early on, as early as possible, is try to get your priorities straightened out. I think a lot of people, and I'm just going to pick a school from thin air, let's go Harvard. You just hear, everyone knows Harvard. And you're like, okay, I'm going to go to apply to Harvard. Why? Why are you applying there? Do you want to apply because it's Harvard? That's great, but you're going to live there for 4 years. You're going to pay a lot of money. And at the end of it, you want to get something out of it. And like, I think a lot of people go into the college process with just a few schools they've heard of, friends have gone to, just local colleges they know about, but which is fine. That is a way to approach the process. But I think having a very strict set of priorities is totally fine. And it could be something like, it needs to have this program, or I want it to be in the city. I don't want to be in a rural area. Like the caveats are multiple, but I would say get your priorities straightened out. And if you can, and this is very difficult depending on which schools you're applying to, try to talk to the people who go there, especially people who have like nothing to do with the school. Like a tour guide will probably be like, oh my goodness, this is the best school ever. They're paid to tell you that this is the best school ever. Don't, like, they're valuable for some information, but try to reach out to people in that school. Try to reach out to alumni, if there are any from your school, and be like, what is that school really like? Is it super competitive? Is it really hard? Is there no social life? Are there no club? Like, there's just things that outside of the programs the school has that you should think about, because again, you're living there for like 4 years. If you're going to community college, that's 2 years. Like, you just should be aware of what type of community you're stepping into and what are your priorities in terms of what type of college you want.
Great advice. Anything else to add, Mark?
Yeah, I think Johnny and Emily basically said it all. When it comes to thinking about the colleges you want to go to, it really does help to just try and make a visit out there, because you really do want to get a feel for what the city is like, what the campus is like, the atmosphere and the environment, if that's a place that you feel comfortable staying in for 4 years. When I was applying to college, I made my visit to CMU. I knew then that this was a place that I could be happy at for 4 years. I got a feel for the environment, and like I learned ahead of time that, you know, it is like a stressful academic environment, but I found that there's a lot of things to do on campus regarding like social life, and also this, I really liked the city of Pittsburgh as well through exploring that. And those were 2 things that I'm so glad I knew ahead of time before applying to colleges, and it made me much more confident in putting all my effort into making my application to CMU as strong as possible, because I knew that that was then one of the schools I really wanted to get into. And I think in general, when you apply to college, and this is what I've seen a lot from my personal experience and a lot of like my friends in high school, you want to make sure that on your application that everything is holistically strong. You don't want to just have one area be really, really strong and the rest of them, be kind of just like subpar and not as well thought out. And by that I mean, so they college applications tend to look at like three things, right? Your standardized test scores, your GPA, then like your extracurriculars, and then also the answers you fill out on the application, like the personal essay and all those other questions. Those things are really important. You want to make sure that all of them are really strong. Like you can't just have a strong GPA and a strong SAT or ACT score, and then just not put effort into the other parts of the application. I think most admissions officers care more about seeing who you are as a person and what you can do for the school, as opposed to just seeing that you had a 4.5 GPA or something in high school. So just make sure on the application that you pay close attention to all those components.
Awesome. I totally agree with that analysis of being holistically strong, but just more broadly, like do things that you like. Don't just say, I'm going to do this one thing because that's what colleges want to see. Do things that interest you. Like I've known that I wanted to study computer science for a long, long time, since like probably late middle school for me. So I knew that I was going to be applying to CS schools. And my senior year, I had the opportunity to either lead the robotics team or go be a lead in a play. And I didn't really like the robotics club that much. So I went and I was the lead in a play instead. And I've definitely talked to other people who are like, I'm not going to do anything related to theater because I want to go study CS at MIT. But like it's okay to go do extracurriculars that aren't related to your core subject matter and just like be a human being, be a person, go do things that you like. And it's not going to hurt your application to go pursue things that make you happy. We've got another good question from Bridges to Science, which is, why did you choose to do CS Academy in Python versus Java? And believe it or not, I actually don't have a lot of personal experience writing Java code. So I can't talk about the like my own experience writing it, but I can talk about the pedagogical reasons that we decided to do that. So Python, first of all, it's a real language that's very popular and is used in a lot of production scenarios. So like people who are doing AI research will use Python. The Reddit backend is written in Python. It's one of the most common languages on GitHub. So it's a real programming language used all over the world right now, and it's a good skill to have. But then on top of that, the syntax is comparatively very easy compared to Java. So you don't have to worry about your curly braces. You don't have to worry about semicolons. If you're starting out as a programmer in Java, sometimes it's easy for people to get lost in that. So like you forget 3 semicolons and you have to go find those, hunt them down. With Python, you just need your white space tabs and your colons for the most part. And then also the simplest program in Python is much simpler than the simplest program in Java. If you want to like print hello world in Python, it's one line. If you want to print hello world in Java, again, I said I haven't written much code in Java before, but I think it's like system.out.println of, and then you have to put in the string. So it's way more complicated to do the easier things. And that's basically it. And if any of you have taken APCS and you have the experience struggling through Java and you want to talk about that a little bit, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I wanted to add like the Hello World example. Like I went through all of AP Computer Science and I still at the end of it did not understand what public class main, public static void main string bracket args system.out.println. It took me like way after I took that class did I finally understand what all of that meant. And so like that's totally daunting. Like when you're learning programming for the first time, you don't want it to be like a faith thing, right? Like when you're learning Java and that's your first language, there's a lot of things that you just have to believe. Like your teacher's just like, this is what this does. And you're like, okay. With Python, it's a lot more like, feels like English. You can kind of see directly like what's going on. With Java, because it's designed for large like system, like large systems, software systems. There's a lot of like good features that are very verbose and useful for these kinds of concepts. But when you're first learning a programming language, they just kind of get in your way. So,
anybody have anything else to add there?
Yeah, I guess it's actually kind of a funny story because I took APCS as well. And so I learned how to code from the beginning in Java. And then when I came to college, I I felt like I forgot a lot of my programming. So then after like 2 years, I took the intro to coding class again, which is entirely in Python. And when I started learning Python, at first I was just really suspicious of the language because, like Austin said, the syntax is just so much cleaner and easier and simpler to understand. And I was like, why is this just so easy? And like, where are all the curly brackets? Like, nothing seems to be right in this language. Like, it's just too easy. So at first, I was like, I didn't like Python for that reason. But then the more I used it, and now since I use it a lot for CS Academy, I've actually like really enjoyed writing in it versus like writing in Python, because I think it's just simpler and you can just focus. You can spend so much more time on focusing on like what you want the code to actually do, as opposed to just constantly trying to clean up the syntax related to like the brackets, the semicolons in Java, which really can be a pain.
I'll add one more thing, which is that we don't think of ourselves as a course that teaches Python. We think of ourselves as a course that teaches programming and algorithmic thinking. And Python is a tool to teach that problem solving kind of stuff that mostly stays out of the way and lets you learn how to solve the problems and not learn system.out.println, public static void main, all that kind of stuff. Okay, a question from Mrs. Leslie's classroom. Do you think you'll ever include text Python with the graphics? Students are always wanting to use both. I'm not 100% sure what this means. So maybe like using input or like printing, both of those things you can do right now. So if you wanted to get user input and use that in an exercise, you can use app.getText input. If you wanted to print out some numbers or print out shapes even, that's something that you can do. But I don't think that will ever be a core of an exercise. So we are very committed to making sure that every exercise is interactive and graphics based in some way, so that you're making a little application that you play with versus making a program that just takes in some numbers and outputs other numbers. Here's a quote from Mark Stellick, one of our co-founders, where he said, students are always going to enjoy drawing an ice cream cone more than calculating the volume of an ice cream cone. And that's a philosophy that we really try to stick to, where we make these things interactive and graphics instead of input and output with numbers. All right, I'll pick another one from our question bank. Let's see. Oh, what are some misconceptions that you think people have about studying in the STEM field?
I don't know. It's kind of a tricky question. I'm not sure if I have the answer to that, but well, actually, yeah, I feel like I can't really think of anything, so I'm just gonna pass on that.
So I have
Okay.
one that's like specifically programming related, which is there's this like kind of pop culture notion of the programmer as being the basement dweller who's sitting at home code monkeying all day, never goes outside, has no vitamin D intake. So in reality, like that's like sort of software developing, software engineering jobs are actually not like that at all. There's like a ton of communication that goes on, a ton of design. You're not spending all your time just mindlessly punching buttons on your keyboard. And so I think that's a huge misconception that's really fueled, especially by like Netflix shows, things like this, where there's this common archetype of the hackery programmer who never goes outside, but really we do go outside, I promise.
I would say something like, and I don't know, I don't want to make this too broad, but I think for me, I know I always knew I would do biology, but I know I was, I guess you could say, scared to approach programming. This kind of misconception that it is all math, all extremely boring, and most of all, not a field for women. So I just want to say that I think that this, as not only is the archetype of sitting in your room alone programming forever and ever and ever, but also the male archetype. So I think that one thing that has really helped me by going to college and seeing so many people and interacting with so many people in just every facet of STEM, not just programming, is that it is a field for everyone. It is an amazingly just diverse place. I mean, sure, it has a long ways to go, but it is a field for everyone. And that even if it's really hard and scary at the beginning, as it was for me, coding did not come naturally to me as someone who had to kind of learn it pretty late in the game, did not have fun with it at first. I think it's worth throwing yourself in. If you like genuinely see at the end of the road, I want to do chemistry more than anything, but organic chemistry is hard. Like, throw yourself into it. I promise it'll be worth it. Maybe. I don't know. I'm still not done with organic chemistry. I'll keep you posted.
It's advice for yourself too. Okay, let's see. What happens if you want to change your major or career path in college?
Maybe I'll start. I've had a few friends who have gone through that process. So for the most part, it's actually been, in their experiences, they started in a major and they kind of moved to a major that was that was more specific to what they actually wanted to do. So for example, I had a friend studying cognitive science, and it turns out cognitive science, this might surprise you, is actually very closely related to CS. So he was taking a lot of computer science classes and actually realized that he was more interested in that. So he made that switch. Similarly, I had a friend who went from business to information systems, again, kind of liking the more coding aspect of it, I think, in that aspect. I also have seen people undergo like bigger changes, like from architecture to a completely unrelated field and such. I think that can happen because architecture, I'm sure Amar can attest to this, is really, really difficult. Like it's definitely possible to make those large changes. You then kind of do have some added pressure of needing to finish a new major if it's completely unrelated in less time. And so it can be difficult, but it's definitely possible. And I've seen people do it. So don't stress too much if you're not totally sure that what you're doing or like what you want to go for to major in college. If you're not totally sure that that's what you're set on, there's still room to fiddle around and figure that out.
I'll also say that in a lot of schools, it's much easier to switch majors after the first year because you spend that first year taking a lot of gen eds, which are shared across a lot of majors. So if you figure out what you want to do during that first year, then you can probably transfer a lot of your courses over. But then once you're in 3 years or especially 4 years, it becomes much more difficult to try to finish on time. Anything else to add?
I was just going to note, and I know we're technically a CS curriculum, but I'm going to call back my sister, who's my rubber duck. She's currently applying to 7-year medical programs. So this isn't a, like, if you are going into college and you know for a fact that you are not 100% certain what you're doing, don't do that. Don't apply to like a fixed full-blown program. And if you are and you're feeling those suspicion, make sure there's ways to back out. There's ways to bail in the middle. Like if you are so certain that you're going to do, say, medicine, because those are very well-known and very specific programs, like just be so sure. Just be so sure. But yeah, I would like to agree with Johnny and Austin that it is very possible, like first year, definitely. Some colleges, I'm sure, are a bit more strict than others. So be careful with where you're applying. But I think it's very possible. I've had friends also switch between very unrelated, very related majors. So, and don't like beat yourself up about it. I think like be open to that change. Because I know I came into college and I was like, I'm going to do biology and then I'm going to go to grad school and then I'm going to do biology forever and ever and ever. And then I took like 2 classes and I was like, wait a minute, maybe that's not the game plan. So be open to change because I always say this, but your high school self does not know what they're doing. Like, sure, you're making some really big life decisions, but I am at a very, very different place on a very different track than I thought I would be like less than a year ago. So be open to change and like don't beat yourself up if you happen to find new things interesting.
Cool.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what was said, and I actually really think this is a very important question too. as someone who personally thought about changing their major and is now looking into like a different career path, I can tell you that yes, definitely. Like when you first enter college, you like don't expect that what you have in mind for your career path is going to be the same thing after like 2, 3, or even like 1 year, because like it's not the same until after you go through college and actually take some of the classes related to what your field of interest is, that you just get a sense of, is this what I want to be spending the rest of my life doing? Is this the kind of career, the industry, that I see myself being happy in? Um, so yeah, and I think if you start to ask these questions about like, is this the right major for me? Then you need to act on it like now. Like don't continue to try and stick it out in the major or program that you're currently in but are unhappy in. I've seen a lot of my friends do that, especially with architecture. It's pretty common where people will be unhappy after the first 2 years, but then say, oh no, it's okay. Like I'll just tough it out. And then they graduate and, they're very, very unhappy at that point because they feel like they continued in this program that they just didn't get any like joy out of, and they felt the pressure from their friends and classmates or parents to continue doing something that they weren't that happy with. And you really have to just take the initiative to say, look, listen, like I'm not 100% certain that this is the right path for me, and I need to look at other options, or I need to see what else is out there for me. And that can be as simple as, just taking an elective in a different field or something to get a sense of what else is there. Or it could be talking to your academic advisors, talking to friends, talking to people from other professions too. And then I also think on that note, um, just because your major is one thing in college, that doesn't mean that your career has to be directly aligned with that major. Like for example, I mean, I'm an architecture major, but I am now interested in pursuing a career as like a UX and product designer. And those two, like, it's very possible for me to still have that career as a UX designer, even though my major is not necessarily something related to like human computer interaction, or because I mean, there's so many examples of people doing something completely unrelated to what their field of study was in college. There's just so many examples. So you don't have to, like, you shouldn't feel bogged down or chained to this one career path just because that's what you studied something else in college. Or because I mean, I think at the end of the day, like, people, when they're hiring you, or if you're trying to like start a business, people care about your skills and what you have to offer, not necessarily what your major was in college. So yeah, that's just something really important to think about.
Definitely agreed. We've got 2 more really good questions from Bridges to Science. Shout out to Bridges to Science coming out with all of the great questions. So what extracurriculars in high school did you find that were meaningful and helpful to you now as a college student?
I don't know if this counts exactly as an extracurricular because it was also part of class, but I did high school orchestra in high school, and that was really big for me, both in terms of just having something that I really enjoyed doing in school, but also, friend circles, and then also growing as a leader through being like a section leader in the orchestra, all the sorts of things like this. That was a really positive experience for me overall. And I definitely am glad I did that, even though sadly I'm not really playing my viola that much anymore, or my violin that much anymore.
This is gonna sound bizarre, but bear with me. My high school had research labs, like very, yeah, we got funding from weird places, but we had like real research labs, and I decided to do research at my high school. And the overall research process was fun. I learned a lot, but I ended up meeting probably one of my closest mentors ever. So I don't know if this is exactly what you wanted, but it's just my answer. I think he like single-handedly like heavily changed my career, what my goals are in life, my career, my priorities. I think I was very, and I guess I still am, but very academically focused, very grade obsessed, very like introverted and very quiet. And this guy just, he doesn't care. He will like call you out on the spot. If he thinks you're not doing right, he will roast you in front of everybody in the class. He has no chill. If he thinks you're doing something wrong, he won't just like look on. He will mock you. And this sounds like an awful person, but he is actually one of the most amazing people ever. I still keep in contact with him to this day, and he pushed me to like go outside my comfort zone, to do things I would never have wanted to do. He pushed me to become a better leader, to speak out when I think something is wrong. And that could mean, oh, I think my club is doing something wrong, to like, I see something fundamentally awful happening. Like he just he taught me how to go out and pursue things I really care about. So I guess the lesson from that, if someone is like looking like, oh, which club should I join so that colleges like me the most, or what experience should I look for? Going back to what Austin said, just do what you like. Like you don't know when you're gonna find that person who inspires you to study biology, as he did. You don't know where you're gonna find those amazing people and amazing memories, but you'll definitely like if you this might be a bit like karma-esque, but like what you put out into the world is likely what will come back. If you throw yourself into something and show that passion and show that love that you have for a subject matter, the people around you will want to put that time back into you. So when I threw myself into research, this random old guy who was like grouchy and like literally, what's that guy from that Christmas movie?
Scrooge?
Scrooge, thank you. I don't watch Christmas movies. He was like the Scrooge, but he's secretly like the sweetest grandpa ever and will give you life advice and like give you hot chocolate when you're sad. So throw yourself into things you'll love, and yeah, people will see it. Other people will definitely see it.
Yeah, I agree with that definitely. Choose extracurriculars that you like for sure. Do something that you're passionate about. And I guess like also along the same lines in high school, and I feel like I didn't do too much of this, but do things that are, or at least try doing something that's outside of your comfort zone. Because I think it's really important to try different things that at first may not seem like they're the right fit, but then like once you do them, you learn more things about yourself. And I mean, oftentimes I've seen this like from coming to college and like joining different clubs that things I feel like activities, especially the clubs, extracurricular sports, they don't always, sometimes they don't, like if they're the things that you really love, like sometimes they don't seem that way at first. Such as like you really have to like be involved with it before you know that you love doing those kinds of activities, if that makes sense. And I feel like that's very true with high school as well. I think like for specific extracurriculars, so I was a varsity track and field athlete throughout high school, and I think doing a sport is one of the best things you can do because one, I mean, physical exercise is really just so beneficial for your mental and physical health. It's really important to be active, like no matter how old you are throughout your life. But yeah, and also just being an athlete really teaches you important skills of discipline and time management. And going back to our conversation about how high school is different than college, right? College is for sure like much more difficult and can be much more stressful than high school. I mean, the stakes are much higher in college than they are before in high school, like regarding like academics and also just like professional things as well. So I mean, you really do have to be much more disciplined and have a much better grasp of how to effectively manage your time, how to efficiently get work done in college. And I think being an athlete in high school is the like one of the best ways that you can really prepare for that ahead of time. Because I mean, when you're an athlete, you already have limited time from going to practice, going to meets, to games, every throughout the week, and then having like limited time to do your homework and balance like all your other activities and chores at home. So yeah, that for sure is an extracurricular I would stress to everyone.
Nice. My answer to this question, I mentioned before that I did some theater in high school, and definitely drama as an extracurricular I found to be meaningful and also helpful in college. My drama teacher was an amazing guy, and I learned from him like how to be a good leader and how to organize a large team and have high standards and produce something with a group of people that you can be proud of in the end, which is definitely something that I continue to do in high school, like working with the CS Academy team on a large project that we go and send out later. It's pretty similar. And then I also learned how to act in front of a group of people, how to engage an audience, how to keep the energy up. I learned little things in drama like make sure you cheat out, which means like even if you're supposed to be looking this way, you still keep facing the audience. And when I taught in college, I remembered that and I would face my classroom while I was teaching. So these are things that really helped me as a TA and later on as an instructor. So yeah, taking drama, I think, made me a much better teacher and helped me realize my love of teaching, which is one of the big reasons that I'm here right now. So learned great things there. And then the second question there was, if you could go back to high school, is there anything you would have done differently? Yeah, deep question.
I actually want to answer this one first because Amar was just talking about being on track. One of my big regrets was that I did cross country my freshman fall, and I was trying it. I didn't really prepare at all. I had never really run before I went into it. So when I got to cross country, it was like the most painful experience of my life because I was literally the slowest person on the team to the point that I was holding back this other, slowest people on the team. And normally when you do cross country, only the top scorers are the ones who count in the meet. So you can't really detriment the team. I managed to detriment the team by being on it. So at the end of the semester, I was like, okay, I don't like this. I am too bad at this. I'm going to quit. So I quit. And now I still regret that because not only am I still very unathletic, unfit, and wish I was better about being disciplined, about taking care of that aspect of my health, I also think that there's a lot to be said for if I had pushed through, decided to come back and like stayed with it, then like my mental resilience, I think would have been so much more. And there's so many times in college where I run into walls, I get frustrated, I need to push through it. And I think if I had cross country, every time I run into one of those walls, I would be able to push past it. Now it's always a challenge, always a struggle, and I wish I had that experience already.
Amar, Emily.
I can go. I guess to answer that, like, there's so many things that I would do differently if I was in high school again. And I mean, off the top of my head, I guess I can think of, I wish I had been more smart about some of the classes I chose to take in high school because I feel like when I was a student, I took some hard classes or some electives just for the sake of having that appear on my transcript to make myself, look a little smarter or whatever, or show that I was like well balanced in my interests. I don't know, some very ridiculous reason like that. And now that I look back on it, I really wish I took classes that were more catered towards my own interests or classes that I really cared about and would have been excited to come to school every day to learn about. Because what happened was I mean, throughout high school, like I would take all these classes and realize that I didn't care about them at all. And, I would look for ways to just completely like, not like pay attention in class or I just like wouldn't put that much effort into like studying and doing my homework. And, that was a big mistake. So yeah, I wish I could have gone back and really thought a little bit more about like what kinds of like how I chose to like spend my time in school and related to like classes and stuff. Yeah.
For me, I would hands down say I wish I was less academic. I think I genuinely missed out on so many life experiences. And as I've entered college, I've been trying to push myself to take the time to be with friends, to be with other people. And it's really hard to do. if you are someone who's their entire life just rotated around academics, cancel plans for academics, and I just missed so much. I missed friends' birthdays, I missed family events. And at the time I could go, well, I have a test on Tuesday and I should be, but as someone who has taken more time for friends now and more time for people I care about, I'm still here. I'm living. I haven't like failed out of all my classes. I'm, it's like life moves on. And when I look back at high school, there is a lot of blankness. There's a lot of nothingness. But when I look back on my freshman year of college, I don't remember, oh, I got an A on this one exam that I studied. I remember the one time at like 9 p.m. I decided to get milkshake with my friends for no reason. I remember the one time I went to grab like donuts in the middle of a school day because my friend was feeling sad. Like those are the things you remember. And if you're thinking about for college, those are the things you're going to write about for your personal statements. You're not going to go, what's a personal hardship you had? Oh, I had a hard test the other week. College is going to be like, yeah, like congratulations, that's school. So whether it's for applying to college or just like being a happy human being, I wish I just sometimes sacrificed a grade just so I could be with people and have those meaningful experiences, which maybe isn't the best thing I should be advertising to high school students. But I genuinely believe this, that if I had just maybe taken that time to make closer connections, I would have been happier in high school. And I would have been like, the transition to college would have been even better.
Nice. I think my advice there, let's see, I would tell my high school self to go do all the things that made me scared, which I think I did a pretty good job getting out of my comfort zone. But when I think back, it's like a bunch of little things, some dumb stuff like, oh, I wish I would have done drama freshman year instead of waiting until sophomore year because I was nervous. Or, oh, I really should have asked Sarah to prom. Why didn't I do that? Like just tiny little things like that. If it makes you nervous, go do the thing. And then let's end it. We've got 1 minute left, so let's try to answer this fast. Let's see. I don't know if I'll be able to find the question quick enough, but it's basically why study CS now in high school if we don't plan to be a CS major in college? What's the point of learning all of this?
Just really quickly, studying CS teaches you problem solving skills, and that's fundamental to everything you do. So yeah. Problem solving is great.
Gonna say the same thing. Like Austin said, CS Academy is not a Python course. It is a algorithm programming logic course. And that is so invaluable. I've carried it to every single class, even just one basic Python class. And I apply everything into every class I take.
I'm actually a CS major, so it's a little skewed. But I would say no matter what you end up doing, there's a good chance that knowing programming is going to be very useful. And of course, learning how to program means you learn how to problem solve. And I'll once again add, that's really useful.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'll say there are a ton of different fields in which CS is applicable. So like if you want to go study public policy, there's a bunch of research right now into gerrymandering and how we can use algorithms to redistrict states instead of having humans do it. So having an understanding of algorithmic thinking could be applicable there. If you go and study medicine and you want to interact with people who are doing AI research on oncology, like detecting cancer faster, being able to talk to them about the algorithms that they're writing is super useful. And then with everything you do, being able to look at a problem, because whatever you do in your life, you will be solving some kind of problem, and then break it down into steps and think about those steps individually and how they connect. All of that stuff that you're learning here is going to be useful literally everywhere in anything that you do. All right, it is now 2:31. We're 1 minute over. Thanks everybody for joining us. It's been fun answering your questions. Thanks to everybody who asked the questions and watched our live stream today. And we will see you next time. Bye.